This program is a work of fiction. The station, broadcast, and events you are about to hear are not real. This audio is created for narrative and entertainment purposes only.
This is AM 1720, the last emergency broadcast. If you're hearing this transmission, emergency conditions are ongoing. This is WTLEB AM 1720. You are listening to an emergency broadcast. If you are just tuning in, please stay with me. My name is not important right now. What matters is that this station is still on the air, and we are receiving information that appears to be consistent across multiple regions. It is Tuesday. The date is April 17th. The time is 8:12 in the morning Eastern Time. I'm going to speak carefully and plainly. I am not going to speculate. I'm going to tell you only what we can confirm, and I'm going to repeat it often for those of you who are just joining us. At approximately 7:46 this morning, local time, multiple air traffic control centers reported unidentified objects appearing simultaneously in controlled airspace. Within minutes, those reports were echoed by civilian pilots, weather stations, and orbital tracking systems. These objects did not enter our airspace in any conventional sense. They were simply there. There were no sonic booms, no heat signatures, no approach vectors. They appeared over cities, over coastlines, over rural areas, over oceans, every continent, every major population center. I want to stress this. This was not staggered. This was not regional. This was global and simultaneous. If you are just tuning in, this is not a drill. At 7:53, the Federal Emergency Management Agency issued a preliminary advisory asking the public to remain calm and await further information. That advisory has since been echoed by similar agencies in Europe, Asia, South America, and Australia. There has been no call for evacuation, no shelter-in-place orders, no declaration of hostilities. The word being used repeatedly, and I am quoting here, is peaceful. We are going to take calls, but I am asking everyone to stay focused on what you are actually seeing, not what you think it means. Let us go to the phones. Caller, you are on the air. The caller identifies himself as Mark. He says he is calling from outside Columbus. He sounds calm. He says he stepped outside when his phone started vibrating with emergency alerts. He describes an object hanging in the sky to the west. He says it looks smooth, metallic, oval. He estimates it is about the size of a football stadium, but immediately admits he cannot tell how far away it is. He says it is not moving. He says it is silent. I ask him if there are lights. He pauses. He says there is light, but he cannot tell where it is coming from. He says it looks like the sky itself is brighter around it. I thank him and remind him to stay safe and keep his phone charged. If you are just tuning in, that is one of dozens of similar reports we are receiving. Time check. It is now 8:19 a.m. Eastern. We are also monitoring shortwave and international bands. The BBC is reporting identical sightings over London, Manchester, and Edinburgh. A Japanese public broadcaster is describing objects visible over Tokyo, Osaka, and coastal regions, again with no movement and no sound. I want to be very clear, these are not aircraft, these are not drones, these are not weather phenomena. We are going to our next caller. The caller is a woman named Denise calling from Phoenix. She sounds shaken but coherent. She says what she sees does not match the previous description. She says the object over her area is not oval. She says it looks like a ring, like a hollow circle suspended in the air. She says the sky inside the ring looks darker, not brighter. She says she cannot see through it exactly, but that it feels wrong to look at. I ask her if it is moving. She says no, then she says yes. Then she corrects herself and says the clouds are moving, but the thing is not. She says she does not hear anything, but she feels pressure in her ears. I summarize what she told us for listeners just tuning in and thank her for calling. Already you can hear this. The descriptions do not match. That does not mean anyone is lying. It means we do not yet understand what we are seeing. Time check. 8:24 a.m. Eastern. We have received a statement from the White House press office. I am going to paraphrase it carefully. They confirm awareness of the objects. They confirm no hostile actions have been taken. They confirm ongoing coordination with international partners. They ask the public to remain calm, avoid speculation, and not interfere with emergency services. That statement ends with the phrase, "We are not alone, but we are not under attack." Those words were chosen very carefully. We are going back to the phones. The next caller is from rural Iowa. He does not give his name. He says he is standing in a field and looking straight up. He says he does not see a ship. He says he sees an absence. He says the sky looks like it has a hole in it. I ask him to clarify. He struggles. He says it is like looking at something that refuses to be seen. He says when he tries to focus, his eyes slide off it. He apologizes for not making sense. I tell him he is doing fine. I repeat his description for the audience. I do not interpret it. If you are just tuning in, you are hearing multiple eyewitness accounts of unidentified objects present over much of the world, described inconsistently but reported universally. Time check. 8:31 a.m. Eastern. We are receiving our first expert commentary, though I want to stress this is preliminary. A physicist we contacted at a major university whose name we are withholding because he did not expect to be speaking publicly this morning, says only this: whatever these objects are, they do not conform to any known aerospace or atmospheric technology. He also says something else. He says the most unusual part is not what they are doing, it is what they are not doing. They are not communicating, they are not maneuvering, they are not reacting. They are simply present. We have another caller. This caller is a commercial pilot grounded in Atlanta. He says all departures have been halted. He says air traffic control did not give a reason, just a directive. He says he cannot raise any aircraft in the sky on emergency frequencies. He says the object above the city is enormous. He says it is triangular. This directly contradicts earlier descriptions. I point that out on air calmly. The caller insists. He says 3 points, sharp edges, no lights. I thank him. If you are just tuning in, please understand. Conflicting descriptions are not unusual in situations like this. Perception varies. Stress alters memory. Distance lies, but the presence is undeniable. Time check. 8:39 a.m. Eastern. Reports continue to pour in from Europe, South America, and Africa. The language differs, the descriptions differ, the timing does not. Every report agrees on one thing: they arrived at the same moment. We will continue to take calls. We will continue to relay confirmed information. We will continue to repeat ourselves for those who are just finding us. This is WTLEB AM 1720. Stay with me. This is WTLEB AM 1720. You are listening to an emergency broadcast. For those just tuning in, it is Tuesday, April 17th. The time is 9:04 in the morning Eastern Time. If you are just joining us, here is what we can confirm so far. Unidentified objects appeared simultaneously over every major population center on Earth. At 7:46 this morning, these objects are stationary, silent, and inconsistently described by eyewitnesses. No hostile action has been observed. All global governments are issuing coordinated statements urging calm. That is where we are now. We move to what just changed at approximately 8:57 a.m. Eastern. Multiple international broadcasters interrupted programming at the same moment. Not with alarms, not with emergency tones, with a message. I want to be extremely careful here. We are not playing audio. We are not showing video. What I'm about to relay is a summary compiled from official transcripts released independently by several governments and verified against foreign broadcasts still accessible at this time. The message was received everywhere, every language, every dialect, no delay, no mistranslation. It did not require decoding. The message opened with what several linguists are already calling a flawless greeting. No cultural markers, no idioms, no references to religion or politics. Just acknowledgement. It stated that the presence of the visitors had been anticipated, that humanity was not being surprised. That line alone has already raised more questions than answers. The message then clarified three things. This was not an invasion. This was not a negotiation. This was not a warning. It was an evaluation. Those exact words appear in every transcript. Evaluation. If you're just tuning in, I want to repeat that the word used was evaluation. We are going to the phones because people are already reacting. Caller, you are on WTLE BAM 1720. The caller is a man named Luis calling from San Diego. His voice is steady but clipped, like he is trying not to let emotion through. He says the object offshore changed slightly when the message ended. Not moved, changed. He struggles to explain it. He says it is the same shape, but it feels closer even though it is not. He says his phone did not ring, it did not vibrate, the message simply appeared on the screen. Already translated, already read. He says it felt like it was meant for him specifically. I summarize his account and remind listeners that this sensation is being widely reported. Time check, 9:11 a.m. Eastern. We are receiving expert interpretation now, though interpretation may be the wrong word. A linguist we reached briefly before her department went dark says the most disturbing aspect of the message is not what it says, but what it does not say. There are no demands, no threats, no offers, no invitation to respond. Another expert, a communications engineer, says the delivery mechanism does not resemble radio, satellite, or network transmission. He says it appears to have bypassed infrastructure entirely. That matters, because just minutes after the message concluded, something else began. We are going back to the phones. The next caller is a power grid technician in Ontario. He says he is not authorized to speak publicly, but he is calling anyway. He says regional grids did not fail. They powered down in sequence, cleanly. He says breakers did not trip, equipment did not overload. It was as if someone flipped a switch that does not exist. I ask him if this is happening everywhere. He pauses. He says yes, but not all at once. Patterns are emerging. If you're just tuning in, this is important. Power is being lost selectively, not globally. Hospitals remain online. Emergency services remain functional. Residential areas are going dark in blocks. The caller disconnects mid-sentence. Time check, 9:20 a.m. Eastern. International updates are becoming harder to verify, but here is what we have. Germany reports rail systems halted without derailments. Japan reports all high-speed rail stopped simultaneously. Brazil reports data centers entering safe shutdown. South Africa reports mining operations powered down without warning. No fires, no explosions, no casualties, just absence. We have another caller. This caller is a woman from New Jersey. She is crying, but she is coherent. She says her husband was outside when the message came through. He stopped walking. He stood still for almost a full minute. When he came back inside, he could not explain where he had been. He insists nothing happened. She insists something did. There is no proof. I thank her for calling. I summarize what she said. I do not comment. Time check, 9:27 a.m. Eastern. If you are just tuning in, please understand this. Whatever is happening appears deliberate, controlled, observational. A military analyst we spoke to earlier this morning said something that has stayed with me. He said this does not resemble a first strike. It resembles a test environment. Another caller now, a man from Texas, claims he was visited. He says light filled his bedroom. He says he could not move. He says no one touched him. He says he was not taken anywhere. He says he was examined by something he could not see. I ask him if there are marks. He says no. I ask him if time passed. He says he does not know. I summarize his account and remind listeners that stress can manifest in powerful ways and that there is no confirmation of personal contact at this time. But I also do not dismiss him because we are receiving more calls like this. Time check, 9:34 a.m. Eastern. One final update before we pause. A second statement has been released jointly by multiple governments. This one is shorter. It states that cooperation is ongoing, that the visitors have not issued instructions, that the situation is under review. It ends with this sentence: "There is no cause for alarm at this time." I want to be very careful when I say this. That sentence is doing a lot of work. This is WTLEBAM 1720. Stay with me. We will continue after this brief pause. This is WTLEBAM 1720. You are listening to an emergency broadcast. If you're just tuning in, it is Tuesday, April 17th. The time is 10:06 a.m. Eastern Time. Before we move forward, I need to reset the board for anyone joining us late, because we are now far enough into this that partial information is dangerous. At 7:46 a.m., unidentified objects appeared simultaneously across the globe. At 8:57 a.m., a message was delivered in every known language describing this event as an evaluation. Since that time, no direct instructions have been given, no negotiations have occurred, no threats have been issued. However, systems across the world have begun to change behavior. That is where we are, and that is where things stop being theoretical. Time check, 10:12 a.m. Eastern. We are going to the phones. Caller, you are on WTLEB AM 1720. The caller is a man named Greg, calling from a suburb outside Minneapolis. He sounds irritated more than afraid. He says his power went out 8 minutes ago. He says he assumed it was weather-related, but then noticed something odd. His neighbor's house, directly attached to his by a shared wall, still has electricity. He says he walked outside. Half the street is dark, half is not. He says there are no utility trucks, no alerts, no explanation. He asks me if this is happening elsewhere. Greg, it is. I summarize reports from earlier callers in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Ontario describing nearly identical patterns. Time check, 10:18 a.m. Eastern. We are now hearing from infrastructure workers, and the tone of those calls is different. A woman calling from Colorado identifies herself as a grid load analyst. She says she is not speaking officially. She says what is happening does not match any known failure mode. She says systems are not tripping, they are complying. She repeats that word twice, complying. She says commands are being issued inside closed systems that should not be able to receive commands. She says no one knows where the instructions are coming from. I ask her if this could be a cyber event. She pauses and says no. She says cyber attacks leave fingerprints. This has none. Time check, 10:25 a.m. Eastern. We are receiving another wave of calls describing the objects overhead, and I want to slow down here because the contradictions are increasing. A caller from Los Angeles says the object above the city appears closer than before. He says it is casting a faint shadow even though the sun is behind cloud cover. A caller from Boston insists the object there has become harder to see, not easier. She says it is still present, but her eyes slide away from it when she tries to focus. A caller from rural Kansas says there is no object overhead at all anymore. He says the sky looks normal, but his radio reception has become unnaturally clear. These descriptions cannot be reconciled, and yet they are all being reported at the same time. Time check, 10:31 a.m. Eastern. An astrophysicist we reached earlier has sent a follow-up message. I am paraphrasing carefully. He says if the objects were intended to be observed uniformly, they would look the same everywhere. The fact that they do not may indicate that observation is not the goal. He suggests the possibility that the objects are not the phenomenon being tested. We go back to the phones. A caller from Oregon says she believes she was visited. She says she was sitting in her car when everything went quiet, not silent, quiet. She says she lost awareness for what she believes was several minutes. When she came back, her car was parked differently than she remembered. She says there are no marks, no missing items, no witnesses. She apologized for calling. I tell her she does not need to apologize. Time check. 10:39 a.m. Eastern. For those just tuning in, we are now receiving a growing number of reports involving missing time, altered awareness, or brief lapses in memory. None of these reports have physical evidence. All of them are consistent in one way. The callers sound confused, not performative. Another call, a man from New Jersey says he works in data center operations. He says at exactly 9:58 a.m., several facilities he monitors entered what the system labels terminal idle state. That term should not exist. He says it means the systems are not shut down, they are not powered off, they are not crashed, they are finished. He says he has never seen that status code before today. Time check, 10:46 a.m. Eastern. International reports are now becoming delayed, but we are still hearing fragments. Italy reports regional blackouts with hospitals excluded. Japan reports automated factory lines stopping mid-cycle without damage. Parts of Africa report irrigation systems failing simultaneously across unrelated regions. Again, no destruction, just absence. We have another caller. This caller is a university student in Michigan. He says he believes he was abducted. He immediately corrects himself and says he does not like that word. He says he was examined. He says he was not frightened during the experience. He says the fear came afterward when he realized how little it mattered. He says he felt like a data point. He says he does not think it was personal. There is no proof. Time check, 10:54 a.m. Eastern. A neurologist we spoke to earlier today says something that I want to repeat carefully. She says when humans are placed under observation, they often experience memory fragmentation. Not because something is being hidden, but because the brain does not know how to encode the experience. She says novelty at this scale breaks normal perception. That explanation is comforting. It is also insufficient. We are going back to the phones. A caller from Arizona says the object overhead began emitting light briefly about 10 minutes ago. A caller from Nevada insists nothing changed at all. A caller from Utah says the object vanished and then returned. No two accounts line up. Time check, 11:02 a.m. Eastern. If you are just tuning in, this is WTLEBAM 1720. What we are documenting now is not panic, it is pattern recognition. Infrastructure is not failing randomly. Perception is not aligning. Private experiences are increasing. And through it all, there has been no further communication, no correction, no clarification, which raises a troubling possibility. This may be exactly what the evaluation looks like. Stay with me. This is WTLEBAM 1720. You are listening to an emergency broadcast. If you're just tuning in, it is Tuesday, April 17th. The time is 12:03 p.m. Eastern Time. I am going to begin again with a recap. I know many of you have already heard this. I also know that repeating it may be the only way to keep some sense of order. At 7:46 a.m., unidentified objects appeared simultaneously across the globe. At 8:57 a.m., a message was delivered in every language describing this event as an evaluation. Since then, infrastructure has begun shutting down in controlled patterns. Reports of altered perception and missing time have increased. No further communication has been received. That is the shared baseline. What has changed since late morning is not the visitors. It is us. Time check, 12:10 p.m. Eastern. We are going to the phones. Caller, you are on WTLEBAM 1720. The caller is a man named Harold calling from outside Tucson. He sounds angry, not afraid, angry. He says he is watching military aircraft in the distance. He says they are not flying in formation. He says they are scattered, low, fast, and silent. He says this started about 20 minutes ago. He says no one has told the public anything. I ask him if he is certain they are military. He snaps that he has lived near the base for 30 years. He says he knows the sound. He hangs up before I can thank him. Time check, 12:16 p.m. Eastern. For those just tuning in, we are now receiving multiple unconfirmed reports of military movement across several countries. No official statements have been issued acknowledging these movements. I want to be clear, at this time there is no confirmation of engagement, but movement is happening. Another caller, a woman from northern Italy, says she heard explosions earlier. She then corrects herself. She says she did not hear explosions. She says she felt pressure like thunder without sound. She says her power went out immediately afterward. She says the object overhead did not react. She asks me if this means we failed. I tell her I do not know. Time check, 12:22 p.m. Eastern. We have reached out again to military analysts and defense correspondents. Most are no longer reachable. One message came through before the line went dead. It said simply, "This was inevitable." No context, no elaboration. We are going back to the phones. A caller from Washington State claims his brother works at a naval installation. He says his brother sent him a single text message before losing service. The message read, "They're testing boundaries." The caller asks me what boundaries. I do not answer. Time check, 12:29 p.m. Eastern. For those just tuning in, I want to slow this down. There has been no declaration of war. There has been no visible retaliation from the objects overhead. No weapons fire has been confirmed, but something has shifted. Calls are coming in now from people describing the same thing in different words. Orders without explanation. Movements without announcements. Silence where coordination should be. Another caller. This one is from Australia. The connection is poor. He says fighter jets took off from a nearby base. He says they did not climb. He says they flew out over the ocean and disappeared into cloud cover. He says they did not return. He says the sky looks unchanged. The line degrades and drops. Time check, 12:36 p.m. Eastern. I want to share something we are hearing repeatedly from experts even as their access disappears. They say the evaluation may not be about strength. They say it may not even be about intelligence. They say it may be about restraint. And if that is true, then what we are doing right now matters more than what the visitors are doing. We have another caller. This caller is from Texas. He says he works in emergency logistics. He says multiple command centers attempted to coordinate responses across borders. He says secure lines failed one by one. He says fallback systems activated, then went dark. He says it felt like trying to speak while someone slowly removed the floor beneath you. Time check, 12:43 p.m. Eastern. International reporting is becoming unreliable, but fragments are still coming through. A broadcaster in South America reported national grid loss immediately following unconfirmed missile test rumors. A European station cut off mid-sentence while discussing air defense posture. An Asian emergency band went silent after repeated requests for clarification. Patterns are emerging, not in what is being done, but in what happens after. We are going back to the phones. A caller from Florida claims her husband was called into work at a secure facility. She says he sounded scared. She says he told her they don't care what we can do. They care what we try. She has not heard from him since. There is no confirmation. Time check, 12:50 p.m. Eastern. I want to pause here because something important is happening psychologically. Earlier today, callers asked what the objects were. Now they are asking what we did. That shift matters. Another call. A man from Ohio says the object over his city dimmed briefly after news broke of military escalation overseas. A woman from Maryland insists nothing changed overhead, but says her radio signal became clearer. A caller from Nevada says his power came back on for exactly 7 minutes, then went out permanently. These reports do not align, but the timing does. Time check, 12:58 p.m. Eastern. We are receiving one confirmed development now. A single nation, which we are not naming, attempted to restore control over a disabled satellite network using internal redundancies. Within seconds, that nation's civilian electrical grid went completely dark, not in stages all at once. Hospitals switched to generators, emergency systems degraded, communication ceased. There was no warning, there was no message. The implication is impossible to ignore. We are going back to the phones. A caller from that country somehow gets through briefly. He is shouting. He says everything went dark at once. He says phones died mid-call. He says traffic stopped. He says the object overhead did not move. The line cuts. Time check, 1:06 p.m. Eastern. If you're just tuning in, this is WTLEB AM 1720. What appears to be happening now is not punishment, it is correction. A grid engineer we spoke to earlier today said something I cannot stop thinking about. He said, "It feels like a system marking answers wrong." Not angrily, just definitively. We have another alleged visitation report. This caller is a man from New York. He says he believes he was visited earlier today before the escalation. He says during the experience he saw images, cities with power, cities without. He says he did not know what they meant at the time. He says he thinks he knows now. There is no proof. Time check, 1:14 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to do another recap because listeners keep finding us. Objects appeared globally this morning. A message described an evaluation. Infrastructure began shutting down selectively. Military responses were attempted. The response to those attempts was immediate and disproportionate. Not violent, decisive. We do not know what comes next, but it is becoming clear that our behavior is no longer being ignored. Stay with me. This is WTLEB AM 1720. You are listening to an emergency broadcast. If you are just tuning in, it is Tuesday, April 17th. The time is 2:47 p.m. Eastern Time. I am going to begin with a recap because at this point I do not know how many stations are still audible or how many listeners are finding us by accident. At 7:46 a.m., unidentified objects appeared simultaneously over every major population center on Earth. At 8:57 a.m., a global message was delivered in every language describing this event as an evaluation. Since then, infrastructure has been selectively shut down, military responses were attempted, and consequences followed immediately. What I'm about to relay now is the most recent development. At approximately 2:38 p.m. Eastern, a second message was delivered. Unlike the first, this one did not arrive everywhere at once. It arrived where it was still possible. I am again paraphrasing from verified transcripts and direct reports from listeners who received it. The message was shorter. It did not open with a greeting. It stated that the evaluation had concluded. That line appears consistently across all available translations. The message then listed several observations, not accusations, observations. It stated that humanity demonstrates rapid technological advancement paired with poor collective restraint. It stated that aggression persists even under observation conditions. It stated that hierarchical command structures degrade under uncertainty. Then it used a single word that I am going to repeat exactly once. Unsuitable. There was no elaboration. There was no appeal. There was no response channel. Time check, 2:54 p.m. Eastern. Immediately following the conclusion of the message, the pattern of shutdowns changed. Up until now, power losses were selective, staggered, measured. That is no longer the case. We are receiving reports of long-range power transmission ending across entire regions at once. Fuel pipelines are inactive. Refineries are offline. Data centers are entering permanent shutdown states. Not failing, ending. If you are just tuning in, I need you to understand this distinction. Nothing is breaking. It is being concluded. We are going to the phones while we still can. Caller, you are on WTLEB AM 1720. The caller is a hospital administrator from Pennsylvania. She says their facility is still on generator power, but they have been informed there will be no fuel resupply. She says they were not told this by government agencies. She says the message appeared directly on a terminal that was not connected to the internet. It simply stated the duration remaining. She will not say how long. I thank her for calling. Time check, 3:02 p.m. Eastern. International updates are nearly gone now, but here is what we can still confirm. The United Kingdom reports nationwide grid loss. Australia reports complete airspace silence. Large portions of Asia are no longer transmitting on civilian bands. Emergency frequencies are quiet, not overwhelmed. Quiet. We have another caller. This caller is a man from Ohio. He says the object over his city is still there. He says it looks the same. He says nothing about it suggests anger. He says it feels finished. He asked me if this is the end. I do not answer that question. Time check, 3:09 p.m. Eastern. Something else needs to be said. This station is still on the air. Our transmission has not been interrupted. Our power remains stable. Our equipment is functioning normally. Other stations are not. I want to be clear. We are not stronger. We are not protected. We are permitted. A communications engineer we spoke to earlier today said something that did not make sense at the time. He said if someone wanted to understand us, they would let us keep talking. I believe that is what is happening now. We are going back to the phones. A final caller calling from California claims he was visited again. He says this time there was no examination, no missing time. He says he was shown nothing. He says he was only aware of being observed one last time. Then he felt alone. The line goes dead. Time check, 3:16 p.m. Eastern. If you are just tuning in, I do not know how much longer this station will remain audible. I do not know if anyone listening is human. I am going to keep doing what I have done all day. I am going to document the objects remain overhead. The power remains on here. The world outside this building is quiet. If this broadcast is being monitored, then let the record show this. We were not confused because we were ignorant. We were confused because we were human. This is WTLEB AM 1720. The time is 3:22 p.m. Eastern. And if someone is still listening, I don't think we will be able to continue to transmit for much longer. Stay with me. This is WTLEB AM 1720. If you are hearing this, then this station is still transmitting. It is still Tuesday, April 17th. The time is 4:08 p.m. Eastern Time. I am going to do one final recap, not because I believe it will help, but because this is what broadcasters do when there is nothing left to say. At 7:46 a.m., objects appeared simultaneously across the world. At 8:57 a.m., humanity was informed that this was an evaluation. Throughout the day, systems were shut down selectively, then broadly in response to human behavior. At 2:38 p.m., the evaluation concluded. The result was unsuitable. That is the last confirmed communication we received. Since then, global infrastructure has continued to power down in widening waves. Transportation has ceased. Fuel distribution has ended. Most stations have gone silent. Most emergency bands are quiet. Not overloaded. Quiet. Outside this building, the city no longer sounds like a city. There are no sirens, no engines, no aircraft, no distant hum of electricity. Just wind Our power remains on. I want to state this clearly for the record. We did not secure backup fuel. We did not have priority designation. We did not do anything differently than anyone else. We were not spared. We were left running. Time check. 4:15 p.m. Eastern. I have stopped receiving calls. The phone lines are still active, but they do not ring. The call indicator lights have not flashed in over 30 minutes. I attempted to reach other stations manually. There was no response. I attempted emergency relay frequencies. Silence. I attempted international shortwave bands. Static. And then nothing. This appears to be the only signal still permitted to propagate. I'm choosing that word carefully. Permitted. Earlier today I said that the visitors did not appear angry. That remains true. They did not punish us. They concluded us. There is a difference. I want to speak now, not as a broadcaster, but as a witness. If this transmission is being monitored, then let it be understood that we noticed the restraint, we noticed the patience, we noticed the care taken to avoid unnecessary suffering, but we also noticed that no amount of individual kindness mattered once the collective decision was made. If this is how evaluations work, then perhaps the outcome was inevitable. Time check, 4:23 p.m. Eastern. The equipment in front of me is still functioning normally. Signal strength is steady. There are no signs of degradation, no warning lights. The objects outside remain visible through the upper windows of the building. I will not describe them again. It no longer seems important what they look like, only that they are still here. I am going to keep speaking until I cannot, not because I believe this will change anything, but because silence feels like consent. If anyone is still listening, human or otherwise, let the record show this. We tried to understand, we tried to control, we tried to act like we were ready. We were wrong. This is WTLEB AM 1720. The time is 4:29 p.m. Eastern Time. And if this broadcast is still being